Riven knelt alone in the forest, her black ears drooping, her tail limp in the dirt, banished for being wrong. I stepped toward her and said, if they couldn't see your beauty, they didn't deserve you. Before we begin, hit subscribe so you never miss another heartwarming HFY romance. Darren hadn't planned on wandering far from the outpost that afternoon. Just a quiet walk beneath towering trees, a break from paperwork and diagnostics, maybe a chance to clear his head. The forest was peaceful in a way few places in the galaxy were anymore. Soft green light filtered through thick canopies. Moss glowed faintly along fallen logs, and the air carried the quiet hum of distant wildlife. He rolled his shoulders, stretched, and breathed in deep. Perfect day, he murmured to himself. Then he saw her. At first, it was the dark shape against the forest floor. Someone sitting with their knees tucked and their head bowed. Then the details sharpened. Long black hair tumbling over her shoulders, slender arms wrapped weakly around herself, tribal jewelry glinting against her skin. Her ears, fox ears, lay flat against her head, and her tail rested limp and unmoving behind her like something defeated. Darren blinked. Whoa. He had met Vulpines before. Playful, bright, always carrying that fiery orange or amber hair their species was known for. But this woman. Her hair was deep black, rich as midnight water. He'd never seen a Vulpine who looked like her, and he'd definitely never seen one who looked so heartbreakingly lost. He approached slowly, careful not to startle her. Leaves crunched softly under his boots. When she flinched at the sound, he froze. Hey, he said gently, palms slightly raised as he stepped into her line of sight. I'm not here to bother you. Just making sure you're okay. She looked up. Her eyes were gorgeous, dark, glassy, and full of hurt she wasn't trying to hide. She studied him with the stunned caution of someone who expected cruelty, not kindness. Her voice cracked. She swallowed hard. You shouldn't talk to me. Darren lifted a brow. Pretty sure I just did. A flicker of confusion crossed her face, and for a moment she looked less like someone banished and more like someone caught off guard by friendliness she didn't understand. He crouched down in front of her, not too close. What's your name? She hesitated, as if the act of speaking it aloud might get her in trouble. Riven. Riven, he repeated, letting the name settle warmly between them. I'm Darren. So, want to tell me why you look like the whole galaxy dropped onto your shoulders? Her lips pressed together. She looked away. You wouldn't understand. Try me. Silence lingered. The breeze lifted a few strands of her hair, black as night, smooth, striking, different, beautiful. When she spoke again, it was barely above a whisper. I was banished. Darren's Samai expression softened. Banished? For what? She hesitated again, as if embarrassed by the answer. For this. She ran a shaking hand through her dark hair. They said this color wasn't blessed, that it made me look cursed, wrong, not like them, not like the tribe wants. Darren stared at her, stunned. Not by the reason, but by the fact she believed it. Hold on. They threw you out because your hair is black? Her ears drooped further. Yes. That's insane. He said it plainly, not with pity but with firm disbelief, and Riven blinked as if she had been expecting him to agree with her tribe. She wrapped her arms around herself. They said I'd bring misfortune, that I would taint ceremonies. She swallowed. They told me I should leave before I ruin anything else. Darren sat back on his heels, a slow exhale leaving him. Riven. He shook his head. That's not on you. That's on them. She made a tiny, pained sound, like she wanted to believe him, but couldn't risk hope. He studied her quietly for a moment, then did something that made her eyes widen. He smiled. Soft, warm, genuine. For what it's worth, he said, I think your hair is stunning. Riven's breath caught. She stared at him like he had spoken in an ancient, forgotten language. He continued lightly. Seriously, I've never seen anything like it. It's unique. That's a good thing where I come from. Riven's tail twitched, just barely. She quickly grabbed it, as if ashamed of letting any emotion slip. Darren stood and offered her his hand. Come on. You don't have to sit out here alone. I've got a cabin not far from here. Warm food, a roof, and no one who cares what color your hair is. She stared up at him, and for a long, fragile moment, he thought she'd refuse. But then she placed her fingertips gently into his palm, her voice trembling. Thank you, Darren. He helped her up, steadying her as her tail brushed lightly against his leg. She froze, ears flicking, embarrassed beyond belief. He only chuckled softly. Don't worry, he said. Happens all the time. It absolutely did not. But she didn't need to know that. As they started walking through the glowing forest, side by side, some of the weight on her shoulders began to lift. And Darren found himself glancing at her black hair again, not out of curiosity anymore, but because he already thought it was beautiful. Darren's cabin sat at the edge of the forest, a cozy single-story place built from pale weathered wood and mismatched panels from old research crates. It wasn't fancy, but it radiated warmth the same way he did. Soft lights glowing through the windows, faint music humming from inside, and the gentle scent of coffee drifting out every time the wind nudged the doorframe. Riven stopped in front of it, clutching her arm. It's warm. She said it like she didn't trust warmth, like comfort was a trick someone might take away. Darren shot her a grin. Good, I'm allergic to cold. The confused twitch of her ear almost made him laugh. He pushed the door open and stepped aside. After you. Riven hesitated on the threshold, peeking inside. It was cluttered in a lived-in way. A couch with a blanket draped over it, books stacked unevenly on the shelves, tools scattered on a table, a half-finished meal abandoned on the counter. Not messy, just human. She stepped in carefully, as if afraid she'd break something simply by existing. It's different from tribe homes, she murmured, fingertips brushing the back of the couch. That's the idea. Human spaces reflect the human living in them. Darren popped into the small kitchen and started rummaging through cabinets. And this one says, Darren lives here and should probably do laundry. Her lips twitched, the closest she'd come to smiling since he met her. He noticed, and he made a mental note to chase that smile until he saw it every day. He set a steaming mug on the table. Want to try something very human? Riven approached cautiously. Is it dangerous? It's coffee. So, yes. He snorted. Not unless you drink 6 cups in a row. She lifted the mug, sniffed it, recoiled dramatically, and stared at him with genuine betrayal. It smells like burnt sadness. Darren nearly choked, laughing. It's an acquired taste. She set it down with a grimace. My tribe brewed leaf teas. They smelled alive. This smells like punishment. Punishment water, he mused. Actually, that's pretty accurate. Her ears flicked again, amused, but trying to hide it. She didn't know how transparent she was. He grabbed a bowl of cut fruit instead. Try this. No punishment involved. Her expression softened. She took a piece delicately, closed her eyes as she tasted it, and whispered, Sweet. The relief in her voice hit him harder than it should have. They sat at the small table, her posture easing a little, her tail curling around her legs like it wasn't sure whether to hide or stretch. Darren watched her without staring, curious, not invasive. But he noticed everything. How she kept touching her black hair as if reminding herself of what she'd lost, how her fingers trembled slightly when she reached for another fruit piece, how she looked around the cabin with stunned caution, as though any comfort she accepted might be taken away. To pull her out of that headspace, he asked lightly, So, any skills I should know about? Hunting, tracking, teaching small woodland creatures to dance. That earned him the tiniest laugh. My people we're good at many things. Her voice dimmed again. I was good at none of them. Darren leaned forward, chin in hand, voice warm. That can't be true. It is. She fidgeted with a braided bracelet on her wrist. I wasn't fast like the others. I wasn't graceful. I wasn't loud or clever or charming. And my hair. She tugged a black strand with a bitter scoff. My hair was the final proof that something was wrong with me. Darren's tone softened, but his conviction sharpened. Riven, there's nothing wrong with you. She turned her face away, embarrassed. You don't know me. Not yet, he said simply, but I'd like to. Her breath hitched slightly, not in fear, but in surprise. No one had ever said that to her with sincerity. He stood, rummaged through a cluttered corner, and pulled out a soft blanket. Here, you look cold. She touched the fabric like it was something sacred. Why are you doing this for me? Darren shrugged with a gentle honesty. Because you deserve someone who cares. Her ears drooped, overwhelmed. She wrapped the blanket around her shoulders, sinking into it until she resembled a cozy little fox burrito. He pretended not to notice the way her tail peeked out, twitching shyly. Later, while he prepared a simple stew, Riven wandered the cabin with tentative steps. She inspected the framed photos of planets he'd visited, the stack of vinyl records, the mechanical parts he'd forgotten to clean up. You travel a lot, she murmured. Used to, Darren said, stirring the pot. Now I fix things here. More peaceful. She paused. Why did you stop? He glanced over his shoulder. Got tired of running from people. Turns out being alone isn't as freeing as everyone claims. She blinked at him like she'd been struck by recognition. They ate together on the couch, Riven curled up on one end, knees tucked close, tail wrapped around her legs. Darren sat beside her, offering stories about humans. How some wore bright colors just because it made them happy. How some dyed their hair wild hues for fun. How individuality was celebrated. When he mentioned humans with jet black hair being considered mysterious and beautiful, Riven's cheeks warmed visibly. She pushed her fingers into her own hair, unsure. Do you really think it's beautiful? She whispered. Darren didn't hesitate. Riven, it might be the most beautiful thing about you. Her ears twitched so sharply she squeaked, a tiny, involuntary sound she instantly covered with her hands. Darren pretended not to notice, even though he was sure it was the cutest noise ever produced in the galaxy. As the night deepened, she grew sleepy, head dipping slightly. He grabbed a pillow and set it beside her. You can rest. I'll take the chair. Her eyes widened. You'd give up the couch for me? He smiled softly. Of course. Riven curled up, hugging the pillow tightly. After a long pause, she whispered into the dim light. Darren, thank you for helping someone who doesn't belong. He looked at her with a tenderness he didn't try to hide. You belong here just fine, he said, with or without your tribe. Her tail gave one slow, shy wag before she drifted off to sleep. And Darren sat awake a little longer, watching over her, already wondering how someone so convinced she was unlovable could be this effortlessly captivating. Over the next few days, Riven began to settle into a gentle rhythm, though settle was a generous word. Her life in the tribe had been structured, ceremonial, and predictable. Darren's cabin, on the other hand, embodied the chaotic spirit of a man who repaired electronics, collected old vinyl, and sometimes forgot where he'd left his other sock. Riven approached everything with cautious curiosity. On the morning of the second day, she watched Darren make pancakes with the intensity of someone studying a sacred ritual. Her ears perked, tail swaying faintly as he flipped one with a flourish. You're showing off, she accused softly. I absolutely am, he said. I only have 3 skills, and flipping pancakes is one of them. What are the other 2? Making excellent coffee and being charming. She blinked. You are charming. He grinned. See? 1 skill confirmed. Her tail betrayed her with a tiny, happy flick. But the real test came when he invited her to join him in town. You don't have to talk to anyone, he assured her. Just walk with me. Fresh air, new sights, and maybe you'll find a snack you actually like more than fruit. Riven tugged nervously at her black hair. Humans stare. Humans stare at everyone, Darren said lightly. We're curious by nature. Doesn't mean they're judging you. She wasn't convinced, but she trusted him. And so they went. The small trading town was warm and busy, filled with chatter and market scents and neon signs blinking lazily over shop doors. As they walked down the main street, Riven stiffened when people glanced at her, some surprised, some curious, some simply admiring. One child pointed at her ears. "Mom, look, Fox Lady." Riven froze. The mother smiled apologetically. "Sorry, he just thinks you're pretty." Pretty. That word hit Riven like an arrow made of light. She didn't know where to put her hands, her face, her tail. Everything became awkwardly tangled as she tried to compute the moment. Darren leaned down to whisper, "See? Told you." She shot him a flustered look, but couldn't hide the hint of warmth spreading through her. They explored slowly. Every stall, every new scent, every quirky vendor fascinated her. Darren bought her a sweetbread pastry, the kind with powdered sugar that instantly coated her lips and nose. She licked it off carefully, unaware of how absurdly adorable she looked. Darren had to look away so he wouldn't stare. At the tailor stall, she gently stroked a soft fabric. "Humans wear so many colors." "You could too," Darren said casually. "If you wanted." Her fingers paused. "Me? In human clothing? Why not?" She looked down at her tribal wraps and jewelry, hesitant. It would feel wrong. Or, he offered with a smile, it could feel new. She said nothing, but her ears dipped thoughtfully. By the time they headed home, Riven was exhausted in the way that came from experiencing too much kindness at once. She walked closer to Darren than before, not touching, but near enough that her tail brushed his leg every few steps. He didn't comment on it. He liked it. That night, after dinner, she lingered by the window, staring at her reflection. The dim light caught her black hair, turning the strands glossy like obsidian. She frowned. "Darren, when you look at me, does this color really not bother you?" He stepped beside her, folding his arms comfortably. "Riven, it doesn't just not bother me. I like it. A lot." "Why?" "Because it makes you you and you're..." He hesitated only because he didn't want to overwhelm her. "You're someone worth seeing." Riven swallowed softly. Her tail curled around itself in shy knots. "No one has ever spoken like that to me." "Then you've been listening to the wrong people." Her eyes shone with something fragile, hope struggling to be born. Later, when they curled up on opposite ends of the couch, sharing a blanket and listening to one of Darren's old vinyl records, she whispered without looking at him, "Darren, do you think even someone like me could ever be loved?" He turned his head slowly toward her. "Riven, someone like you? You're exactly the kind of person who deserves to be loved." Her breath caught. She didn't speak again that night, but she didn't move away from him either. In fact, somewhere during the quiet music and soft warmth, she drifted to sleep, leaning faintly against his shoulder. Darren stayed perfectly still, a small smile tugging at his lips. She was healing, and he was falling for her faster than he ever expected. Riven's confidence grew in tiny, almost imperceptible steps. Steps Darren celebrated quietly, almost never drawing too much attention, never overwhelming her. She still struggled with self-worth, still hesitated at her reflection, still flinched at unexpected kindness. But she was beginning to reach for things instead of shrinking from them. And Darren noticed every little victory. One evening, she asked if she could help him cook. He handed her a spatula. 5 minutes later, he was prying a melted plastic mess off the stove, while she apologized profusely. "I didn't know it would liquefy." He laughed so hard he choked. "You tried to stir fry with the handle?" Her ears flattened. "I thought it was just a strange human spoon." He doubled over again, wiping tears from his eyes. Riven stared at him in disbelief. No anger, no frustration. He was just teasing her, playfully, fondly. "No tribe member ever laughed with me," she murmured. Darren slipped an arm around her shoulders. Then they were missing out. She froze at the contact, not in fear, but in stunned awareness, before her muscles slowly eased. Her tail brushed his leg again, this time intentionally, though she pretended otherwise. Over the next days, their closeness grew naturally. They cleaned together. Well, Darren cleaned while Riven kept getting distracted by shiny objects and asking 100 questions. They listened to old music. She tried dancing, tripped, and landed against his chest. His hands caught her waist before she slipped. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Her breath trembled. His steadied her. She pulled back quickly, face scarlet. Sorry. Nothing to be sorry for, he said gently. Her tail betrayed her with a rapid little flutter. At night, she began sitting closer. First, a hand's breadth away, then a shoulder's width. Then finally, one evening, she sat so close that her tail curled gently over his leg, like a timid question. Darren pretended not to notice, but inside, his heart warmed like someone had lit a candle there. One particular night, the turning point arrived. A storm rolled in, soft rain tapping against the windows. Riven sat on the couch with her knees pulled up, watching droplets trail down the glass. Darren joined her with 2 cups of warm tea, hers infused with mint and honey, her new favorite. Thinking about something, he asked. She hesitated. My tribe used to say storms wash away impurities. Her voice softened. I wondered if they hoped it would wash me away. Darren set his cup aside and turned fully toward her. Riven, there is nothing impure about you. She hugged her legs tighter. I try to believe that. But some days, it's hard not to hear them. He reached out, slow, deliberate, and touched a strand of her black hair, letting it slide between his fingers. This isn't a flaw. This isn't a curse. It's beautiful. Riven's breath shook. She looked up at him as though he'd said something revolutionary. You mean it, every time, she whispered. Every single time, he replied. Her tail curled upward, an instinctual gesture of vulnerable affection. She scooted closer until their knees touched. He didn't move away. Instead, he offered her a small, warm smile that made her ears lower in shy fluster. I thought, she said softly, that being different made me unworthy. Different, Darren said, brushing her cheek with his thumb, is the most interesting thing a person can be. She leaned into his touch, slowly, timidly, as though she feared she'd imagined his affection. When she didn't pull back, Darren let his hand rest lightly against her cheek. Why are you being so kind to me? She whispered. Because you deserve kindness, he said simply. And because I like you, Riven. Her eyes widened, shimmering. You like me? A lot more than I planned to. Riven's lips parted, and she made a soft, startled sound, her tail wrapped further around his leg without her realizing. Then, in the quietest voice he'd ever heard her use, she asked, Darren, can I stay here with you? Not just tonight, not just until I feel better, but stay. His answer was immediate and gentle. Yes, as long as you want. Tears gathered in her eyes, not sad tears, but fragile, overwhelmed ones. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead lightly against his shoulder. He wrapped an arm around her and held her close, warm and steady as the storm outside. For the first time in her life, Riven felt chosen. And for the first time in his, Darren realized he couldn't imagine his home without her in it. Riven didn't mean to overhear the travelers. She had only stepped outside for air, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea Darren brewed just the way she liked it. Light, sweet, soothing. Evening sunlight filtered through the trees in pale gold ribbons, and she breathed it in slowly, letting the calm settle over her. Until she heard voices. 2 scavengers passed along the forest path, talking loudly as they rummaged through their packs. Did you see the fox girl by the edge of town earlier? One asked. Oh yeah, the other snorted. Black hair, right? Looks strange. Vulpines ain't supposed to look like that. Must be some kind of mutation. Or she's mixed with something. I don't know, just looks odd. Riven froze. Odd. Not right. Wrong. Their laughter stung worse than any physical blow. They didn't know her, didn't know her tribe, didn't know why she was here. And yet the moment they saw her, all they saw was something incorrect. She stepped back without thinking, tail lowering, fingers trembling around the mug. A part of her knew that Darren wouldn't agree with them, that he saw her differently. But bruises on the heart remembered the hurts that shaped them. The men walked on, still talking, their voices fading into the woods. Riven stared at the ground, breath short and hurting. She felt the old voice whispering inside her, "You don't belong anywhere. Even strangers see it. You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong." Her chest tightened. She set the mug down carefully, afraid her shaking hands would drop it. She slipped back inside the cabin silently, unnoticed. Darren was at the workbench repairing a communicator. He looked up immediately, smiling warmly. "Hey, Riv. Out for some fresh air?" She nodded faintly, her movements too small, too controlled. Her eyes stayed fixed on the floor. His smile faded. He knew her too well by now. "Riven, what happened?" She shook her head quickly. "Nothing. I'm fine." "You're not." He stood and crossed to her in a few steps. "Talk to me." Her breath hitched, and she fought it, fought the trembling, fought the tears. She'd been doing so well. She'd been feeling safe, feeling wanted. She didn't want to ruin that by being weak. Darren gently tipped her chin up with a single finger. "Riven." Her eyes filled instantly, and then everything crashed at once. "I heard people talking," she whispered, voice breaking. "They saw me and said I looked strange, that something was wrong with me." Darren's chest tightened with anger. Not at her, but at whoever had hurt her again. "Who said that?" "It doesn't matter," she said quickly, pulling away. "They didn't know me. They didn't mean anything. But I—" Her voice cracked. "I believed them." She folded her arms around herself, as if trying to hold the pieces together. "I thought I was getting better," she continued, shaking. "I thought I was learning to be okay with myself. But hearing them say it, so casually, so easily, made me realize I'm still broken, Darren. You're not—" "Yes, I am," she snapped suddenly, tears spilling down her cheeks. "What if my tribe was right? What if I'm cursed? What if my hair really is wrong? What if I don't belong here with you or anywhere?" Darren stepped forward, but she retreated, overwhelmed. "Riven," he said softly, "look at me." She didn't. She covered her face with her hands. Her tail curled tight around her legs, a shield made of instinctive shame. Darren's voice gentled further. "Please, look at me." Slowly, painfully, she lowered her hands. Her eyes were full of fear, not of him, but of the answer she thought he might give. He walked toward her slowly, giving her every chance to stop him. She didn't. He placed his hands lightly on her arms, grounding her. "Riven, listen to me. You are not cursed. You are not wrong. And you are definitely not broken." Her lips trembled. "Then why? Why do so many people look at me like—" "Because people are used to patterns," he said, "to what feels familiar. And when someone doesn't fit that pattern, they don't know what to do except make it a problem." He squeezed her arms gently. "That's not a flaw in you. That's a flaw in them." A tear rolled down her cheek. He brushed it away with his thumb. "I found you in that forest," Darren said. "And the first thing I thought wasn't that you looked strange. It was that you looked incredible." Her breath shuddered. "Not because you matched something familiar," he continued, "but because you didn't. You are unique, striking, beautiful." "Darren," she whispered, voice trembling, "you asked if you belong here." His thumb grazed her cheek again, gentle. "You do? You belong here with me. You're not alone. You're not unwanted. And you don't have to run from those voices anymore. You can come to me instead." Her body shook with emotion, but she didn't pull away this time. She stepped into him, barely at first, then fully, collapsing into his chest with a muffled sob. His arms wrapped around her instantly, holding her steady, strong, safe. Her fingers gripped the fabric of his shirt like she was afraid he'd disappear. "I don't want to lose this," she whispered against him. "I don't want to lose you." "You won't," he murmured, tightening his embrace. "I'm right here, Riven. I'm not going anywhere." Her tail wrapped around his leg in a trembling, instinctive gesture of trust. For a long while, Darren just held her, letting her cry, letting her shake, letting her feel everything she'd hidden for years. Not trying to fix it. Just being there. When her breathing finally softened, he tilted her chin again, meeting her eyes. "Riven," he said gently, "you don't have to be alone anymore. You don't have to believe the worst voices. Believe me instead." She swallowed hard, her voice barely audible. "I'm trying. And that's enough." Slowly, she leaned her forehead against his. Their breaths mingled, warm, intimate, fragile. Her eyes closed. His stayed on her, full of quiet devotion. In that moment, in the stillness of the cabin, with the forest sighing gently outside, something heavy inside Riven cracked open, not with pain, but with possibility. The quiet between them was warm now. Fragile, trembling, but warm. Riven's forehead rested against Darren's, her breaths unsteady, her eyes closed as if she feared the moment would vanish if she opened them. Darren didn't rush her. He didn't speak. His hands stayed lightly on her arms, steady and reassuring. He could feel the way her tail trembled around his leg, the way her fingers curled gently into his shirt, holding onto him like he was her anchor. Finally, she opened her eyes. "Darren." Her voice was soft, almost afraid. "Why? Why do you care so much about me?" He smiled, a small, warm thing. "Because you matter to me." Her lips parted in surprise. Pure, honest surprise. Like no one had ever told her those words without condition or judgment. "I matter," she whispered, tasting the words like something forbidden. He nodded. "More than you know." Riven swallowed, chest rising unsteadily. "But why? I'm not like other Vulpines. I'm not even like other people. I'm just me. All wrong and—" "Stop." Darren's voice was gentle, but firm enough that she did. "You're not wrong. You never were." Her eyes shimmered again. He lifted his hand slowly, brushing his fingers along her cheek, then up into her black hair. She leaned into the touch instinctively, a soft sound escaping her, small, vulnerable, trusting. "I like who you are, Riven," he said softly. "Not who the tribe wanted you to be. Not who strangers think you should be. You." She blinked rapidly, trying and failing to hold back tears. "You always say things like that. Because they're always true." She inhaled sharply, and then, in a trembling whisper, "What if I want more?" Darren's breath caught, just slightly, but enough that she noticed. "More?" he repeated. She nodded, cheeks flushing a deep red. "More than kindness. More than safety. I want—" Her voice faded, but her hand slid, upward, resting lightly against his chest. "I want you." Darren froze, not in shock, but in the heavy, breathtaking realization of the moment he'd been inching toward without letting himself hope too boldly. He covered her hand with his own. "Riven," he murmured, "I've wanted you from the day I met you." Her eyes widened, ears flicking upward in startled hope. "You did?" "Yes. Even when I was a crying mess on the forest floor." He chuckled softly. "Especially then." Riven let out a tiny, breathy laugh, part disbelief, part joy. Her tail wrapped around him slowly, deliberately this time, not trembling, but inviting. "Darren," she whispered again, her voice barely more than the brush of her breath. "Will you show me what it feels like to be loved?" His expression softened into something tender, almost reverent. He cupped her cheek, leaning in just enough that she could feel the promise in his breath. Only if you truly want that, not because you're scared or lonely or hurting. Only if it's real for you. It is, she said immediately, without hesitation. I've been trying to deny it, but it's real. Every time you look at me, I feel something I've never felt before. Something warm. Something like... Her voice cracked. Like belonging. Darren's thumb brushed her lower lip. Riven. Her tail tightened around him, tugging him closer with surprising strength. She rose onto her toes, face tilted toward his, eyes closing as though surrendering to something inevitable. Please, she whispered, trembling with sincerity. Kiss me. Darren didn't make her wait. He leaned in, closing the last inches between them, and their lips met in a soft, lingering kiss. Gentle at first, as if afraid she might break, then deepening slowly as she melted into him with a tiny, desperate sound. Her hand slid up around his neck, her tail curled around his waist, her body pressed to his with the shy, instinctive hunger of someone starved for affection all her life. Darren held her firmly, one hand in her hair, the other at the small of her back, grounding her in the moment she'd feared she'd never have. When the kiss finally broke, Riven was breathless, her forehead resting against his chin, her eyes shining with something raw and bright. I've never... She swallowed hard. Never felt like that. Darren stroked her hair. Neither have I. She laughed softly, shakily, like her heart had just learned how. I want more moments like that. You'll have them, he said, voice low and sure. As many as you want. Riven gazed up at him, tears slipping silently down her cheeks, not sad tears, but ones born from overwhelming relief. Her entire life, she had been told she wasn't enough. Tonight, she learned she was more than enough. And in Darren's arms, she realized she wanted a future, not just safety, not just shelter, but love. Real love. With him. The kiss lingered between them long after their lips parted, hanging in the air like a warm glow, something fragile and certain all at once. Riven stayed close, pressed against Darren's chest, breathing him in like she was learning the scent of safety for the first time. Her tail was still wrapped around his waist, not trembling now, but steady, possessive in a shy, instinctive way. She didn't seem to realize she was doing it. Darren smiled softly against her hair. Hey, he murmured, brushing a thumb over her cheek. You okay? Yes, she breathed. Then corrected herself, lifting her face to his, eyes shining, lips still tinged pink from their kiss. Better than okay. He brushed a strand of black hair behind her ear, fingers lingering just a moment too long. It made her blush, but she didn't look away. Instead, she held his hand gently against her cheek. I didn't think I'd ever feel wanted, she whispered. Not truly. Riven. He tilted her chin with a tenderness that made her chest ache. You're not just wanted. You're cherished. Her eyes softened, and she leaned up to kiss him again, briefly, sweetly, like she was testing the right to do so. When he kissed her back without hesitation, she made a tiny, joyful sound and pressed closer. Then she paused, stepping back just enough to look at him fully. Could we... Her cheeks darkened, her ears lowered shyly. Could we sit together? Just close? I want to feel this. Feel you. Darren nodded, smiling gently. Yeah, of course. He guided her to the couch, the same worn old couch where she'd slept, curled up in blankets on her first night. But now she sat with him, not beside him. Her legs draped over his lap as she tucked herself comfortably against his chest. Her tail curled around them both like a blanket of soft black fur. Her hand rested on his chest, fingers tracing the lines of his shirt. Your heart is fast, she murmured. You did kiss me. He teased. She flushed so deeply her ears almost quivered. You kissed me back. Yeah, he said, voice low. I did. For a while they simply held each other, the room quiet except for the soft patter of rain outside and the slow, steady breaths they shared. Riven nestled under his chin, completely relaxed for the first time he'd ever seen her. "Darren," she said softly, almost timidly. "May I ask something?" "Anything." She hesitated, fingertips curling slightly in his shirt. "Can I stay with you tonight?" His arms tightened around her instinctively, protectively. "You never have to ask me for that." "No, I mean..." She swallowed, nervous but determined. "I want to sleep beside you, with you, not just near you. I want to feel close." Understanding warmed through him. His voice dropped, gentle and grounding. "Riven, are you sure? Only if it's what you want." "It is," she whispered. "I've never shared a space with someone who made me feel safe. I want my first time feeling safe to be with you." Those words hit him deeper than a confession. They were trust, the kind that couldn't be faked or forced, the kind that came only from healing. He nodded softly. "Then come on." He stood and offered his hand. Riven took it without hesitation. He led her to the bedroom, not rushing, not pressing, just guiding her with the same confidence and gentleness that had wrapped itself around her heart since the day he found her in the forest. Inside, the room was dim, lit only by a soft lamp. Riven looked around nervously. But when he sat on the edge of the bed and opened his arm to her, she crawled into his embrace like it was the most natural thing in the world. She curled against him, her head resting on his chest, her hand over his heart. Her tail wrapped lightly around his waist, warm and soft. His fingers trailed through her hair slowly, feeling her melt under every stroke. She closed her eyes, letting herself be held, letting herself belong. Her voice came out barely above a breath. "Darren, can I tell you something?" "Always." "I used to wonder if anyone would ever touch me gently." Her fingers tightened slightly. "Everyone acted like my hair was a curse, like my fur was wrong. I thought if someone touched me, it would be out of pity or disgust." Darren's chest tightened. He kissed the top of her head. "No one should ever have made you feel that. But you..." She looked up at him, eyes soft and shining. "You touch me like I'm precious." "You are," he whispered. Her lips trembled into a tiny, overwhelmed smile. "Then, will you hold me the whole night?" He didn't even blink. "I'll hold you as long as you want." Riven exhaled shakily, curling deeper into him, her entire body softening in his arms. Her tail tightened around him once, then settled in a gentle wrap. The storm outside faded into a rhythmic patter. Inside, her breathing slowed, deepened, matched his in a quiet, tender rhythm. Just before she drifted to sleep, she whispered, "Darren, is this what love feels like?" He pressed a warm, steady kiss to her forehead. "Yeah, I think it is." Riven smiled, a peaceful, sleepy, glowing smile, and finally let herself fall asleep in the arms of the first person who had ever loved her exactly as she was. And Darren held her close, knowing without question he wasn't letting go. Morning drifted in softly, the pale gold sunlight spilling through the curtains and warming the room with gentle brightness. Riven stirred first, ears twitching at the shift in the air. For a heartbeat, she didn't move, still curled against Darren's chest, her tail wrapped around his waist, her hand resting over his heartbeat. Then the realization hit her. She had fallen asleep in his arms, and she had stayed there the entire night. Warm, safe, loved, her tail fluttered in small, shy spirals beneath the blankets. Darren blinked awake to the soft movement, his eyes meeting hers before he even fully registered the room. A slow smile spread across his face, the kind that made her entire body warm. "Good morning," he murmured, voice husky from sleep. Riven flushed, but didn't pull away. Instead, she nestled a little deeper into his chest, her ears flattening in contentment. "Good morning." He brushed a lazy hand through her black hair, and she melted against him with a soft sigh. For a long moment, neither spoke. They didn't need words. The quiet intimacy said everything. The trust, the affection, the newness of something blooming between them. Riven eventually lifted her head, studying his face with a look he'd never seen from her before. Not sadness, not insecurity. Something tender, something bold. "Darren, thank you," she whispered. "For what?" he asked softly. "For all of this. For last night. For holding me. For not letting me push myself away when I panicked. For..." Her voice shook slightly. "For choosing me." Darren cupped her cheek, thumb brushing gently along her jaw. "Riven, choosing you wasn't a decision. It just happened. Naturally." She leaned into the touch, eyes half-lidded, her tail curling around his thigh in a gentle, instinctual hug. "I want a life with you," she whispered. "Not just safety, not just shelter. A life." Darren blinked, caught for a moment, not by fear, but by the weight of how real her words were. Then he smiled softly. "I want that too." Riven's breath trembled out in relief. She sat up slowly, stretching like a sleepy fox, her hair tumbling over her shoulders in a wild, dark wave. Darren propped himself up on an elbow, watching her with open admiration. She blushed. "You're staring." "Yeah," he said unapologetically. "I really am." Her ears shot upward, flustered and pleased all at once. They made breakfast together. Well, Darren made breakfast while Riven attempted to help and nearly set an oven mitt on fire. She yelped, panicking, and Darren practically lunged to save both her and the mitt. "You okay?" "Yes, no. The mitt attacked me," she insisted, ears flat. He burst out laughing. Riven glared at him for a full 3 seconds before joining in with an embarrassed musical giggle. After breakfast, Riven wandered the cabin, touching things she had once been too shy to approach. She ran her fingers through the books on the shelf, sniffed the spices in the cabinet, admired herself in the hallway mirror for a little longer than before. She paused, staring at her reflection, her black hair, her dark ears, her tail. The woman staring back still looked different. But now, Riven wasn't ashamed of it. She touched her hair gently, watching the light catch it like obsidian. Darren stepped behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "What do you see?" he asked softly. She smiled faintly. "Someone who isn't cursed. Good. Someone who isn't wrong. Even better." Her smile widened. "Someone beautiful." Darren tightened his hold slightly. "Now that's the Riven I know." Her cheeks warmed, but she didn't shy away. Later, they walked outside together, strolling through the forest path where they first met. Riven held Darren's hand without hiding it, her tail occasionally brushing his arm in small, affectionate flicks. Birds fluttered overhead. The air smelled of damp moss and sun-warmed leaves. Riven paused in the clearing where she had once sat alone, banished and heartbroken. "Here," she murmured. "I thought my life was over." Darren squeezed her hand. "Here is where your real life started." She turned to him slowly, her eyes softening into something deep and unmistakable. "Darren, you changed everything for me." He brushed a thumb over the back of her hand. "You changed everything for me too." She stepped closer, wrapping her arms around his neck and pulling him into a gentle kiss, slow, warm, full of gratitude and quiet longing. His hands rested on her waist, steady and sure, holding her like she was something precious and irreplaceable. When the kiss ended, Riven stayed forehead to forehead with him, her tail curling around his leg in a looping embrace. "I want to stay with you forever," she whispered. "If you'll have me." Darren chuckled softly. "Riven, from the moment you fell asleep on my couch, I knew I never wanted you anywhere else." She swatted his chest lightly in mock annoyance. "You could have told me sooner. I thought it was obvious." It wasn't. Her ears whipped indignantly, but her tail gave her away, swirling happily behind her. They walked home together, the sunlight dancing across her dark hair like it was blessing something sacred something reborn. For the first time in her life, Riven held her head high. Not because her tribe approved, not because she fit in, but because she finally believed she was worth loving. And because Darren loved her exactly as she was. As they approached the cabin, she slid her hand into his again and whispered with quiet certainty, "This is home." The cabin felt different now. Not because anything had changed physically, but because they had changed within it. Where once it was a place of quiet routine, it now held warmth in every corner, every shared glance, every brush of Riven's tail against Darren's leg as she moved through the rooms like she belonged there. Because she did. That evening, the sky bled into a deep, violet sunset. Riven sat outside on the cabin's small porch, dangling her feet over the edge while her tail swayed lazily behind her. Darren stepped out with 2 mugs of tea, handing hers over with an easy smile. She accepted it but didn't drink. She was staring at the horizon, expression soft, thoughtful. "What's on your mind?" he asked, leaning against the railing beside her. Riven didn't answer immediately. She took a slow breath, letting the fading light warm her face. "I keep thinking," she said quietly, "about what comes next." "Next?" Darren asked gently. She nodded, turning to look at him. "I feel like I was born again out there in the forest. Like everything before that moment was just surviving. And now I'm actually living." Her eyes softened. "With you." Darren felt his chest warm, a slow expanding heat that made him reach for her hand. She took it without hesitation. "You deserve a full life, Riven," he said. "We can build it together." Her tail curled around his ankle in an instinctive embrace. "Will you teach me? All the things humans enjoy, the silly things, the strange things, everything?" He laughed softly. "Absolutely. First lesson tomorrow. Humans do not climb on top of refrigerators just to see if they fit." She groaned and covered her face. "I told you I was curious. And I'm going to tease you about it for years," he promised warmly. She peeked through her fingers with a dramatic frown that melted quickly into a smile. "I hope so." They sat in comfortable silence, sipping tea as dusk settled fully around them. Fireflies blinked along the tree line. An owl hooted softly in the distance. Riven leaned her head against Darren's shoulder with a content sigh. "I was thinking," she said, voice a little shy. "We should make something for the cabin, something that represents us." "Oh yeah?" Darren smiled. "Like what?" She held up her wrist, where she had woven the braided band she wore every day. "A bond thread. My people make them for someone they trust, someone who changed their life." Darren touched the bracelet gently, fingertips brushing over the small embedded beads. "You made this?" "For myself," she said, "to remind me that even if no one else cared, I still existed." She looked up at him, eyes softening. "But now I want to make one for us." His breath hitched, just a tiny moment, but she noticed. Her smile deepened. "Will you help me?" she asked. "Yeah," he murmured. "I'd love that." They brought out the supplies, threads of dark gray and ember red, small beads carved from forest wood, feathers Riven had collected long before she met him. They sat cross-legged on the floor inside, weaving and looping the strands with clumsy attempts on his part and patient giggles on hers. "You're terrible at this," she teased. "That's why you're supervising," he replied, squinting at a tangled knot. She leaned closer, guiding his hands with her own, their fingers brushing in soft little moments that sent warmth fluttering through her chest. When they finished, the bracelet lay across her palms. A simple band, but beautiful. The threads intertwined like a reflection of their lives. Different colors, different origins, now woven inseparably together. "It's perfect," Riven whispered. Darren tied it gently around her wrist, his fingers lingering against her skin. She looked up at him, eyes shining. "I want you to make a wish," she said softly. "A wish?" "Yes, that's part of the tradition." thought for a moment, looking at her, the way her black hair shimmered in the lamplight, the gentle curve of her smile, the tenderness in her gaze. And then he said, "I wish for every day with you to feel like this one." Riven's breath caught. Her tail curled around him tightly, lovingly. She reached up to cup his face, pulling him into a soft kiss that lingered until they parted, only because breathing became necessary. "I wish," she whispered, "for a future with you." He kissed her again, slow and warm. "You have it." She settled against him, curling into his lap, tail draped warmly across his legs. He wrapped his arms around her, resting his chin gently on her head. Outside, the stars shimmered, bright and welcoming. Inside, the cabin glowed with gentle light. Riven traced circles on his chest, her eyes half closed with peaceful warmth. "Darren," she murmured. "Yeah. Thank you for finding me." He hugged her a little tighter. "Thank you for staying." Riven smiled, her voice drowsy but full of certainty. "I'm not going anywhere." And as the night deepened around them, the two sat quietly in each other's arms. Two souls who had found home, not in a place, but in each other. Their future was unwritten, but it stretched before them bright and full of promise. And Riven knew, deep in her heart, deep in her tail, deep in every wounded part of her finally learning to heal. Her life was just beginning. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe for more sci-fi love and cozy adventures.